Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very special virtual reunion concert. My name is John Prinz and I'm head of the Melbourne Medical School at the University of Melbourne. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I sit, which is the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'm very excited to be opening tonight's virtual concert event and welcoming you all here to mark your reunion this year. Tonight's incredible performance has been created exclusively for Melbourne Medical School and Melbourne Dental School alumni and is a collaboration with Corpus Medicorum, Melbourne's orchestra of doctors, medical students and health professionals. The concert features exceptional violin soloist Markiyan Melnychenko and pianist Stefan Cassomenos, both of whom have performed as soloists with Corpus Medicorum. I hope you enjoy the performance and can join me at its conclusion when I will talk with Corpus Medicorum Director and Founder and MBBS 1991 alumni, Mr. Philip Antipper. Please enjoy the concert. Good evening again, everybody, and welcome once again to this terrific music event. And I hope you enjoyed that fantastic music as much as I did, and just raw talent is the only way to describe it. So thanks very much to all the musicians involved for your involvement. And welcome especially to the alumni guests here for this virtual reunion concert. We weren't planning a virtual concert, but that's what we've been forced to do. And I must say it's been successful. And I'd like to thank Cecilia Dowling, who's with us this evening, who is the brains and the organisation behind this, who is a musician, very accomplished in her own right, and a journalist, and who's chosen the music, organised the venue, just about sorted the whole thing. So great thanks to you, Cecilia, for this. I'd also like to introduce Philip Antippa, who's also on the panel this evening, who's had a dual career as a lead cardiothoracic surgeon and head of chest cancer services at Royal Melbourne, and also works across at the Peter Mac, and also an extremely accomplished musician and coordinator of this musical group, which you're hearing about and you'll hear some more about tonight. Having played music for longer than he's wielded a scalpel. I think started a musical career at 5, and he wasn't let loose with a knife until a little bit later, I don't think. But again, you know, terrific to have you here as an alumnus of the medical school. I think you graduated in 1991, and it's great that you can continue to contribute to the school and the university in this way. So I'd just like then to move to a couple of opening questions and ask Cecilia first. As I've mentioned, you've done all the hard work. This was your great idea. Everything from, as I've said, choosing the music to organising how the whole thing could be put together. It seemed pretty seamless from here, but obviously a huge amount of work. So could you perhaps tell us, or me and the audience, a little bit more about how all this has been put together?
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, John. Before I tell you a little bit about the concert, I'd like to thank all our alumni who are here tonight, particularly the reunion champions who have helped inspire the program that we've put together across the weekend for Reunite Online. I'd also like to thank Philip for his determination and patience in fielding so many emails from me. What started out as a fairly simple plan became increasingly challenging in proportion to the changing restrictions in Melbourne. Philip and I were in touch early in the year about somehow celebrating the connection between Corpus Medicorum and the faculty. As an orchestra of health professionals, many of our alumni play in Corpus Medicorum, and many alumni watching tonight will have been to their concerts in the past, so we wanted to develop that connection. And when our on-campus reunion weekend was postponed for the year, we landed on the idea of showcasing Corpus Medicorum through a virtual concert for our milestone reunion cohorts who are with us tonight. Normally, a recording would be a fairly straightforward process where a set number of players perform some pre-planned repertoire. But the concert you have just seen took on many different shapes over the past couple of months, shifting to accommodate the guidelines for coronavirus restrictions for performance venues, which coming out of stage 4 restrictions in Melbourne was hard to predict. The recording was scheduled for after stage 4, but none of us were sure when that would be or how many people we could have in a room. Our original plan was to record with 20 players with a full combo of instruments, including woodwind, brass and strings. That became 20 string players when venues were asked to avoid instruments involving breath as a risk for transmission. 20 strings became 10, then 5, and then we were looking at a duo, which is when Stefan was able to join the program on piano. The music we chose shifted and changed too, of course, as did the venues. And finally, we landed at the Athenaeum Theatre in Melbourne CBD, with a string ensemble of Corpus Medicorum players, including Philip on viola, on standby to play a special arrangement of the Lark Ascending if possible. We only got the green light to go ahead with the string ensemble last Sunday, in line with the Vic government announcements. So the very next day, we met at the theatre and the string ensemble performed the Lark Ascending with Markiyan, basically without rehearsal, and I think they performed incredibly beautifully. As for Markiyan on violin and Stefan on piano, They are both wonderful soloists who have had the vast majority of their work cancelled this year, both here and overseas. So we were very happy to invite them to play. Both are connected to the university's Melbourne Conservatorium of Music. Markiyan was lecturer in violin for 4 years, and Stefan performs regularly at MCM still, often accompanying students. Both have been engaged to play with Corpus Medicorum's big orchestral concertos as part of the programs that Philip normally stages 3 times a year at the Melbourne Recital Centre. Now, Philip, you had some big plans for Corpus Medicorum this year. I believe the orchestra was all set for a tour to China earlier on. I wonder if you could tell us, what is it like running a large-scale orchestra made up of busy health professionals? And perhaps also tell us how you arrived at where you are now as a surgeon, a violist, an orchestra director, and a busy family man. How do you manage it all?
Thanks very much, Cecilia. And again, before I launch into a few thoughts of my own, I just really want to thank you for all your efforts, and I must say your tenacity. And I think, yes, the number of emails is a testament to your extraordinary efforts and hard work to get this together, and I congratulate you. And ordinarily, organising a doctor's orchestra is like herding cats, but I think it was. I think at this time of year, especially after we'd had a very busy year, we actually had 10 concerts booked for this year, including 4 concerts in China, our own orchestra series at the Recital Centre, and a couple of pop-ups that we now do as well, smaller concerts. It's been a very disappointing, almost a very bleak year. And I think any opportunity to play has just been, we've relished enormously. And I'm so sorry for the rest of the orchestra that they couldn't join us, but we did try very hard to do so. And, it was really wonderful. And it's a very, very special thing to play music. And it's an even more special thing to play it in an ensemble, and especially with people that you know and are good friends. And I think the orchestra's been running for almost 20 years now. And many of us have very special connections and very special bonds for a number of reasons, and it's just something that music can give us all. I'd like to congratulate you on your choice of program, which is a little bit of a segue into my beginning in music, I guess. I learned many years ago, still whilst I was at school, with Christopher Martin. He didn't teach me when I was 5, thankfully, John, but he did. I did meet him in my early teens and studied with him and continued my studies with him as a bursary, as it was called in those days. You did Music 101, and then if you're any good, you're allowed to continue in a bursary through my medical school studies at the Con. In those days, basically, you got a lesson a week, which I think is actually, it's a lot less than that these days. So you got a lesson a week, which I must say often just turned into a bit of a talk fest with Chris, and then you got to play in the orchestra, in the Con Orchestra, which gave a few concerts every year. So that was fabulous. And this program that you chose is a very Christopher Martin program. It was, the Vaughan Williams. He knew Ray Vaughan Williams, and it's like ascending. It's, we played it several times, and it's especially touching. And I must say that arrangement worked very well. And I think Markiyan's and Stefan's playing is very old school, and Chris really admired some of the older violinists, Misha Elman and Heifetz and David Westrach especially. So I don't know if that was intentional, but that really captured to me and brought back some very strong emotive memories of my time with Chris Martin, who was probably the most musical person I ever met. So, and John, I'd have to say I probably do need to thank one of your forebears, who was the dean of the medical school in my first year of studies, and I won't mention him, but when I went to him all excitedly and said, look, I've got a spot in the AYO tour in my first year in medicine in 1986 to Europe. Can I go? It's, almost 6 weeks, and, I'll make it all up. And he goes, that would be just wonderful. You should go. It's a great opportunity. It's fantastic. And when you get back, take off the next few months, because you'll have to repeat first year again. So unfortunately that I didn't go on the tour, possibly the only regret of my life, but perhaps if I'd done so, I may not have continued medical studies, and my life would have been quite different now. But nonetheless, the orchestra is, I think it would be very fair to say, it would be made up by many like-minded individuals like myself who have a very strong passion for music and a very strong passion for medicine. And with the orchestra, we're able to combine it in both ways. I don't really think it's got a great deal to do with being good at maths or anything like that. I think it's a strange combination of, you know, being made to sit inside and do your music practice rather than going outside and kicking the footy, and perhaps a bunch of individuals and people who are not, you know, so good at sitting on a beach, not doing very much. So, and find the concept of relaxation difficult. But nonetheless, Corpus has been going now for over almost 20 years, and we have several missions, I guess, and part of our mission is a philanthropic one, and most of my work at Royal Melbourne is related to lung cancer, both, you know, clinically, educationally, organisationally, and research. And we've raised almost $1 million so far now in lung cancer research, which we pour back into various efforts and fellowships and database informatics and other projects and so forth, which has been extremely satisfying. And certainly when we tour, we take on, we use the same framework where, like we do in Melbourne, where our concerts we pay for as individuals and we contribute as members of the orchestra, except for medical students, of course, they get a free run because we need to keep the lifeblood of our orchestra flowing, and encourage them not to stick their instruments underneath their beds when they get into medical school, or to pull them out. And so part of our mission is very much is to encourage, is our philanthropic aim, and all the money that we raise is basically the ticket sales and the door sales, plus some very generous benefaction that we receive from and sponsorships and so forth, which are terrific. So it is a fair bit of work, I have to say. There's lots of nights sitting in front of the computer sending desperate emails trying to find a second bassoon from somewhere, and sorting programs and doing things, but we've given, I don't know, probably close to 55 concerts now over this time, so you get used to it. And Cecilia, as you know, organising things is, as you've seen, you know, it's not so straightforward, but this year has brought particular challenges, and I think in so much as there's been nothing for us to do, but next year will be even more interesting, and then trying to put on concerts, which with a slightly smaller platform will be a little bit of a challenge, but I think that we're determined to play and determined to contribute as we can for those very special weekends.
That's fantastic, Philip. It's really interesting to hear about the works of Corpus Medicorum and also the mission of the orchestra. And it's just great that you have this idea of keeping the medical students going with their instruments, so that the orchestra continues into the future. And as you say, it's already 20 years old, so I'm sure it's got a great future ahead. And I'm definitely looking forward to the next Corpus Medicorum concert. Now, John, you haven't had the complication of leading an orchestra through a pandemic, but you have had the challenge of leading Australia's oldest medical school through it. Can you tell us how your year has been and what it has been like to run a hugely complex school from your home office, particularly in the lead up to the launch of the newly designed Doctor of Medicine program?
Yeah, thanks, Cecilia. First, at the risk of stating the obvious, I haven't done it alone. It's been a terrific effort from a large number of people. And I particularly want to acknowledge our students and staff that have shown enormous adaptability, flexibility, and resilience during this time. The highlight for us all, including particularly, of course, our final year students, is that everyone has graduated on time with as good a training as this medical school has ever provided for our students, with the additional, which in hindsight will, I think, be the privilege of witnessing as part of the medical profession this pandemic and its worldwide impact and the necessary responses, right from individuals who have lost jobs and incomes and been personally affected by the virus, through to organisational responses by hospitals and by general practice and the system, you know, the government. And whilst it's not particularly pretty at the time for any of us, it's been a remarkable feat, and the country has responded incredibly well. And I think for our students to be deep in their responses to that situation, I'm sure they will look back as a privilege. You are correct. We do have a new MD program coming online in 2022, which is, I won't bore you with the details, but one of its characteristics is a much greater degree of flexibility for our students. So I'd like to think, Philip, that if your son or grandson, perhaps maybe you're not quite that old, comes along to me at the start of 2022 and says that he or she's been invited to an international orchestra event, I would be able to very easily accommodate that, because we are hoping that the course will be sufficiently modular to accommodate all sorts of things, including ventures outside medicine, including having children, including needing to go to work for a while to pay your way through the rest of the course, etc. The other characteristic of the new MD is that a lot of the content will be delivered online to improve the opportunities for our students to have flexibility, but particularly to improve the opportunities for our students to get clinical exposure across a number of areas. And so COVID, ironically, has done us a favour because it's accelerated. We've gone completely online this year. We've delivered our entire program for all 4 years online, but we were well prepared for that, better prepared than many, by luck, not by good management, but because we were preparing for the new MD. So it's been a logistics exercise. It's been a challenge. I like to think our students have benefited from a training that bore no resemblance to what they thought they were going to get, and to be fair, bore no resemblance to what we thought we were going to provide them. And the enormous accommodation of our hospital partners and general practices and other healthcare that have gone out of their way, including state government, to ensure that our students got adequate clinical training and adequate clinical exposure, despite many other calls on people's times and attention. So I'll stop there. Thank everyone again for their contributions and for the wonderful music. And I think we've got a couple of questions that I'm going to leave to you, Cecilia, to address, I think.
We do have a question. Thanks, John, and thanks for all that info about how it's been at the medical school. It's been amazing for me to see how well everything has just continued on despite all the challenges. We have a question for Philip from the audience. The question is, have you got any advice for med students today thinking about pursuing music as you have done so successfully?
Sure. And interestingly, when I do a fair bit of resident and intern and resident selection, and sit on the committee at Royal Melbourne Hospital when we interview new doctors, training doctors who want to come and work, a careful look through. I'm a little biased and do select those that have got practiced, learned an instrument well, because that implies thousands and thousands of hours and dedication and concentration and a lot of that, and obsession, and a lot of the really important skills that we do need as doctors, I must say. So it does impress me, but likewise for any significant endeavour, it speaks volumes. I'm not saying you should continue playing music just so you can get a good job, but at the end of the day, I think it's really important to have a creative outlet which you can work at, and it teaches you, that you can derive an extraordinary amount of satisfaction, which requires patience and dedication and practice. I would encourage all young musicians not to put their instruments away, but to keep practicing, to take any opportunity to play with any ensemble that will have you. Even if you've never sung, just go and sing. When we can, it's a valuable thing. And if you want to join the band, please send me an email. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think music, it's, as a viola player myself, both Philip and I are viola players, and we have a special place in the orchestra and in the chamber groups where we sit within the harmony. And it's always a really wonderful thing to play with other people and to have that connection with people, which for some of us is outside of our work. But it's a really great thing to stick with, absolutely.
Cecilia, could I just add that by chance at today's medical school research symposium this afternoon, we heard music at the interlude from the Med Students a cappella group, which was phenomenal, and also from the Royal Melbourne Hospital Band. choir, which was sort of self-assembled as a response to COVID, and they've got a little bit of press, which is great, and I think you can find them on YouTube. But just to highlight, as Philip has said, to have an extra interest, it doesn't have to be music, of course, I think is crucial for a rounded career. No matter what branch of medicine we end up in, it can be an all-consuming, or there's a risk of it being all-consuming, and to have a foil to that is important. But also just to highlight that we have many opportunities for musically inclined students within the med school at the moment with hugely talented people. And so please don't put your instruments down. Please find some buddies to play with.
Well, that is all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. The concert this evening has been part of our Reunite online program, which is the medical school's way of bringing you all together to mark a milestone year since your graduation from medicine. A lot of you have registered for your class Zoom catch-ups that will start in a few minutes at 7 p.m. Just to remind you that your link to your session is in your confirmation email. Also, if you haven't registered and you would like to join, we are now putting all the links to the Zoom session in the chat on screen. Please make sure to click on the link that is relevant to your cohort so that you can catch up with your classmates. Thank you, John and Philip, for sharing your insights with us tonight. It was really interesting. I wonder if you have any final words for our guests.
Thanks once again. It's a great privilege to be part of this medical school, which is great, and it is certainly much larger than the building that we used to sit in, and that's very obvious these days. And thanks once again for this wonderful opportunity to reconnect, and thanks very much.
And thanks from me.